Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on a question posed by a Star Trek-themed channel on YouTube known as Trek Yards, whose content I've been watching for a little while now and thoroughly enjoy. They uploaded a video recently, as of the time of this recording, asking the speculative question, which era of Star Trek would you most want to live in? And being a Trekkie who is very much a fan of all the various eras of Star Trek, including the J.J. Abrams or Kelvin timeline, all different eras. I love some more than others, but I love them all pretty much encompassed in my fandom of Star Trek. Being a Trekkie, I thought this would be a fun, explorative sort of video to just have a discussion about. And for those of you who are followers of my content or who may stumble upon this video, you're very much welcome to, in the comments below, chime in with your own take on which era of Star Trek you would most want to inhabit. There's also a very fun sort of secondary question in as far as in whichever era you would so choose, who do you think would be someone you would want to be most chummy with or friendly with or try to connect with, that kind of thing. And I'm going to kind of do this a little bit differently to how they formatted it in the Trek Yards video. Basically, I'm going to give a top 3 eras in all of the various, history of Star Trek that I would most want to potentially live in if I could choose from, least to most. And then I'll be answering the question who I would most want to connect with or be chummy with in each of the various Star Trek TV and movie eras. I figured I would touch base on all of them pretty much, rather than just relegating myself to the 3, because in each of the various Star Trek TV series and eras and everything like that, you have a whole host of, unique and interesting characters, some seemingly being more genial than others and more approachable than others and such like that. And I just thought this would be a fun topic of discussion, being a Trekkie. And so yeah, if you are willing to join me on this journey, let's start out with that first question. Which era would I most want to live in? And as a top 3, it's interesting thinking about it because, you want to think about things like the danger that may be involved, the comfort level, would you be an officer? Would you be in Starfleet? What would your rank be? Now, kind of sort of, loosely conforming to what Trek Yards postulated, they said you would be a lieutenant in whichever era you would so choose. And it's one of those things where my knee-jerk reaction in most, questions to do with Star Trek when it comes to favorite era or favorite series, my favorite end-all be-all series is the one that started it all, TOS, the original series. But would I necessarily want to live in that era? The Enterprise, the Constitution class, is a beautiful ship. I love the look of it. But on the interior of the ship, it does look like kind of stuffy a little bit. It does look a little uncomfortable in how it's formatted, the kind of seats and chairs they have and all that kind of stuff. There doesn't seem to be lush carpeted floors and, sort of very cushioned seats and all those kinds of things. The opposite being sort of the TNG era. And so in my looking at the various eras of, where I would want to most inhabit, my third choice, least among the 3 that I would choose, would probably be TOS, even though it's my favorite viewing era. I love Captain Kirk, I love Spock, McCoy, all of those characters. I would say it still falls in line in my top 3, but it's the third among them, as I say. Coming in at a number 2, now there is some debate. You could say that the NX-01 Enterprise from the series Star Trek Enterprise, as commanded by Captain Jonathan Archer, played by Scott Bakula, is much more utilitarian and much less comfortable looking even than, the Constitution class Enterprise from TOS. But I beg to differ. I think the beds look softer to me, and some of the seating and everything like that. For certain crew quarters, of course, there are multiple bunks and shared quarters and things of that nature, which might get a little hectic. But if you're a lieutenant, I don't know. I wonder if the same goes along those lines as far as the ranking system. I would wonder if you would actually be given your own sort of room, basically quarters, and or Would that necessitate that you would have to be part of the command crew? I don't exactly know. But the Star Trek Enterprise NX-01 Enterprise, while a very sort of dangerous era, and I mean that ship gets shot up left, right, and center all the time, every other episode. Sometimes they are really riding the rails of their own destruction. I just love the vibe of Enterprise. It was a series that was on at a time when I most needed it. Life was handing us lemons, and that series was the lemonade that got me through it. The idea of, very much as the original series was for viewers in the 60s and 70s during the reruns, Enterprise conformed to this idea of a more positive, adventurous, very much curious future. This idea of going out and exploring space and trying to get to know these other alien species for the very first time. While it was nerve-wracking and dangerous, there was an awe and a wonder with the idea that it's an offshoot of our own contemporary time. It's not too long in the future. It's something humanity can actually achieve potentially. And there was hope in that. There was an answer to that dream that Gene Roddenberry had, at least in my humble opinion. I know not everybody stomachs that series and can palate that series as well as I can, but it is actually my second favorite all-time Star Trek series. And so, whereas TOS, my favorite series, came in at number 3, number 2 would be, the NX-01, that whole era, that Enterprise era, that I would want to inhabit. And coming in at number 1, I very much highly debated this, and I kind of feel like it's almost a lazy cop-out answer, but it would probably be the, Enterprise from Star Trek The Next Generation, the Galaxy-class, huge hotel in space, because that ship just looks like a hotel in space. It looks like a vacation center. Comfort is of the utmost sort of focus when it came to the design and the form and function of a lot of the elements of that vessel. And it just seems like homey. It just seems like a place you would want to go to hang out, and whether it's going to 10 forward or going onto the holodecks and things of that nature, it just looks like a very comfortable ship. They get out of many of the predicaments they find themselves posited into without as much destruction as some of their other counterparts in the other various Star Trek series. And I just like that era. I mean, one of the things about that era, too, is you have series like Deep Space Nine and Voyager, which are offshoots of that era. And, providing you're not killed on an away mission or something like that, you could survive through all of them, and really you could move if you got tired of being on that ship and that kind of thing. And just from a comfort standpoint, from a luxurious standpoint, the Galaxy class, NCC 1701D seems like the most appealing as far as eras to live in. And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of my, off the top of my head, top 3 potential choices for eras in the entire history of Star Trek I would most want to inhabit. TOS coming in at number 3, Enterprise coming in at number 2, and TNG coming in at number 1. And so now moving on to that second, probably more fun question. In each of the various Star Trek TV series and film eras, who would you most want to befriend? Who would you most want to try to hook up with, or try to be chummy with, be friendly with? Who do you think is the most approachable character out of the casts of all of the series? And for this one, I'm going to loosely go chronological, starting with Star Trek Enterprise, being that it's the earliest televised series as far as, the history, the timeline of Star Trek. And I think if I was aboard the NX-01, I would probably want to get friendly with 3 different people. The first would probably be Trip Tucker, the engineer, because he's just a really down-home, down-to-earth, genuine sort of guy. Of course, he's friends with Archer, but you see that he's friends with other, lower sort of ranking people on board, and he's friendly with them. I mean, he also becomes chummy with Malcolm Reed and everything along those lines. But he seems like one of the most approachable characters who would be friendly, who would be supportive. He wouldn't look down upon you and anything like that. as well as Hoshi Sato and Travis Mayweather. I really think both of them are, again, sort of down home, down to earth characters. Hoshi would be a little more tentative because I kind of feel like in watching the series, being that she is a vocal expert and everything like that, she has these unique talents. There's an element of her character I feel that is reserved, and she might not be as receptive as a Travis Mayweather or, a Trip Tucker kind of situation in approaching her. It might take warming to her or letting her warm to you if you were to approach them. But I think out of all of the different, cast members in Star Trek Enterprise, of course, I'd want to befriend Archer as well. Archer would seem like a father figure, a very supportive character, who would be mentorish and things along those lines. But I mean, strictly speaking, as far as characters you could actually be friends with, you could be chummy with, you could have, off-the-cuff conversations with, I think Travis, Trip, and Hoshi would be the trifecta in that series. Moving on from there with the next sort of chronological series, TOS, aboard the NCC 1701, the original series Enterprise, I think for me personally, there would be an element of me wanting to be chummy with Bones McCoy, because he just seems like somebody who is, while he comes across as, irascible and ornery at times and things of that nature, I think there's a level of his having seen and experienced a lot that I would want to gain from his wisdom and his perspective, his very heartening and humanistic sort of qualities. But that might not necessarily work out because, of course, you already have that triumvirate, that very strong bond between he, Spock, and Kirk. While I would want to shoot for the moon and befriend Kirk and be chummy with him, of course, might not be as a lieutenant, as willing to be chummy with you, being that he has to be in command. So I kind of relegate myself to thinking along the lines of either Chekhov or like Uhura. Scotty, I'm a fan of Scotty, don't get me wrong, but he is all into the getting drunk and fit-chased and everything like that, and that's not my own personal thing that I'm attracted toward. I prefer to steer away from stuff like that. I would want to hang out with creative, interesting people, and you have Sulu, you have Chekhov, you have Uhura, I feel are the most down-to-earth characters that you wouldn't need to worry about the rank-and-file system. They are all compassionate, they are all humanistic in their own right, and very similar to the three I chose from Enterprise. Now, sort of spinning off into the J.J. Abrams verse, TOS era, I think the characters I would most want to get to know and befriend would probably be Chekhov once again, Uhura once again, and I would throw in there Carol Marcus because hot damn, and that's all I'm saying. Similar reasons, I feel like there's a creativity, a humanistic, compassionate nature that, are befitting of these characters. I think you'd have a better shot with the Chris Pine Abramsverse Kirk at befriending him and being chummy with him than you would necessarily William Shatner's take on the character, who is much more in command and less about letting his hair down, so to speak. And so yeah, those would be my choices for the Abramsverse Trek. Moving on from there, The Next Generation comes next chronologically, and that's a tough one because, of course, I would want to sidle up with Counselor Troy a little bit, but I feel like she'd never be off the job. It would be hard for her to recoil from her empathic capabilities and things along those lines. I would probably most likely want to befriend Geordi LaForge and/or Data, or both of them. Going on adventures in the holodeck, Sherlock Holmes framework adventures and things of that sort would be highly, highly entertaining. And they are just very personable, relatable characters. Again, where the ranking system wouldn't necessarily have to get in the way. Would I want to befriend a Captain Picard? Sure, I would love to be on the same sort of footing and level as Riker is with him. And Riker himself is an interesting guy. But I don't necessarily feel, as I've watched The Next Generation, that Riker was as relatable a character, on a personable level, on a friendly level, a friendship level, as Geordi and Data might be. And so yeah, they would definitely be my choices for The Next Generation, following on from there, of course, comes next Deep Space Nine, would probably be Dr. Bashir and Miles O'Brien. Once they have gotten their friendship together, you know, kind of akin to Star Trek Enterprise, where you had Trip Tucker and Malcolm Reed. They were reluctant friends at first, but they began to become really good friends, genuine friends, and closely knit friends. You kind of had a similar aesthetic going on between the relationships of Bashir and O'Brien on Deep Space Nine. And while I would want to get to know Worf, I mean, he's in his own kind of warrioristic world, and the relationship with Dax and all that kind of stuff. I would definitely want to benefit from his, you know, the skills of his fighting and what he is knowledgeable along those lines, training and things of that sort. But I think just as far as the most approachable characters goes, you'd have to go Bashir and O'Brien, and I think there would be a lot of fun times. Again, holodeck adventures, you know, playing darts in Quark's bar and everything like that. And I just think they'd be really fun characters to hang out with in that particular era, that particular series. And then finally, we have Star Trek Voyager being in that time frame. You know, I think the most approachable characters, I definitely would want to sidle up with Seven of Nine as much as I could. I mean, hot diggity damn. She's the Carol Marcus of that series. Hot chamama, but she would not have it for a minute. You know, it would not work out. I also wouldn't mind trying to be chummy with B'Elanna Torres, but again, she probably would not have it. She would only tolerate so much. Not the most personable, you know, genial character on that ship. So I think probably, and I'm surprising myself in saying this because I've always been fascinated by Tim Russ's Tuvok, and I would love to be under his tutelage in a similar manner to how he brought under his wing Kess and things of that nature. But I think Harry Kim would probably be the most approachable character in the Voyager framework. Tom Paris a little bit, but I think Harry is even that much more down to earth than Tom appears to be. You know, Tom's very much a fun, happy-go-lucky kind of guy, but he does have a chip on his shoulder, and I don't think he would look, you know, so far beyond his ranking, you know, to a degree. He doesn't seem to me as approachable as a Harry Kim might be. And, you know, again, you kind of run into that thing because it is the Next Generation spin-off era, you know, hanging out on the holodeck. I mean, of course, it's sort of, as the Trek Yards guys talked about when referencing Voyager, there's a tighter-knit sort of group, a more familial group in the entirety of the crew of that vessel because of the predicament they find themselves in. If you were on a Intrepid class, you know, starship in the galaxy proper rather than so many thousands of light years away, it might be a different story. It might be more conforming to the galaxy class TNG Enterprise sort of framework and that kind of thing. So I think in the framework of Voyager, Harry Kim would probably be the most approachable character. He would be definitely one among, probably the first among that I would want to approach. And then Tuvok would probably be the second in just his wisdom and his Vulcan manner. I would just find that fascinating. I would want to learn as much about Vulcans as I could through his tutelage, and you know, the idea of being able to meditate and, you know, become one with yourself and all these kinds of things. I think that would be a blast, you know, to be able to talk to Tuvok and relate with him on some level. And so, yeah, that's pretty much the, you know, finale of this particular discussion topic, ranging from which eras of Star Trek I would most want to inhabit, most want to live in, if I could so choose, in a top 3, as well as in each of the various eras of Star Trek, the series and the, you know, Abrams verse. Who do I think amongst the crew would be the most approachable, you know, to be friends with, to connect with? And I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below, my fellow Trekkies. Whether you've followed me for a long time or you just stumbled onto this video, what are your answers to these particular questions? Feel free to speculate, and if you wanted to do a video response, if you make videos, you could very much do that and just, you know, leave me a comment below to let me know to check out your channel. Otherwise, post a comment, you know, with your own perceptions and perspectives along those lines, answering these questions. And so, yeah, otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.